Rallying's a sport of precision and controlled aggression. Dirt, snow, and gravel are unforgiving, and a single mistake can mean disaster. That's why most rally drivers push the limit, but never cross it. Unless you were Colin McRae. Where others braked, he went full throttle. Where others played it safe, he risked everything for speed.
McRae is pressing on regardless, resort to desperate and dangerous tactics to slow him down.
McRae was a driver so fearless that instead of being known for winning trophies, he became a legend of motorsport because of his reckless driving style. And whether his races ended in glory or in a cloud of broken car parts, one thing was always certain: they were spectacular. Because for the craziest rally driver of all time, there was only one way to drive: flat out. It's 1995, and 27-year-old Colin McRae is about to compete in the penultimate round of the World Rally Championship, the 31st Rally of Catalunya. Without a doubt, this is McRae's most important race in his 11-year-long career. If he wins, he'll most likely be crowned the first ever British World Rally Champion during the last race of the season. However, it won't be an easy feat, both psychologically and on the tracks. You see, Colin's veteran teammate and the lead driver of the Subaru team, Carlos Sainz, is also in the race for the title. In fact, in the Drivers' Championship standings, McRae sits in first place, but only 5 points ahead of the Spaniard. If Sainz wins the rally on his home ground, he'll overtake McRae's first place in the standings, putting himself in a strong position to claim the third World Rally Championship of his career. As the most anticipated race of the 1995 season begins in Barcelona, Sainz and McRae line up in the running order, with the Spaniard going first and the Scot second. When the marshal sends them off, the two Subaru teammates charge through the stages, each with a distinctive driving style. While Sainz takes a measured and precise approach, ensuring every maneuver is calculated and executed with control, McRae decides to do what he does best: push the limits of the Subaru Impreza with his characteristic when in doubt, flat-out mentality. By the time they reach the second leg, which is one of the 3 multi-stage sections that make up a rally event, McRae's pulled ahead of Sainz by a handful of seconds. Yet, the fight is far from over. Sainz, knowing that the title was at stake, responded with a sudden aggressive push, closing the gap during the last stages of the day to just 7 seconds. With no margin for error for both drivers from this point onwards, everything was going to be defined during the final day of the event on leg 3. However, when the time came for the final showdown, the Subaru team faced one of the biggest dilemmas in rally history. Tensions between the teammates had escalated to the point that if they let Sainz and McRae race against each other freely, there was a real risk that at least one of them would crash and be disqualified. Subaru wanted to avoid this risk at all costs, as the team needed both drivers on the podium to have a real chance of winning the manufacturer's title at the end of the season. As a result, before the start of the final stage of the rally, Subaru's team principal, David Richards, had to make the tough decision to force one of their drivers to slow down and let the other win the race.
So when the order came, Colin was in second place.
We're fighting for the championship. Why should I have to finish second?
There are other issues that come into this. We're running a team for Subaru to win the manufacturer's title, and it would be foolish to fight inside a team. It's the reality of being in a professional team, I'm afraid.
Just like everyone expected, McRae was furious, and when his time came to compete, he pushed the pedal even further, bluntly ignoring his captain's order as he broke down in anger. As tensions rose beyond the breaking point, Sainz was visibly frustrated, hoping that the Scot would eventually come to his senses. Yet, McRae couldn't care less of what his teammates or team officials thought about the situation. He was there to win the race, even if it meant going against his own team's wishes. As the final kilometers of the race approached, Colin almost wiped out a group of Subaru engineers who were attempting to slow him down, and finished the Rally Catalunya in the fastest time on the track, 8 seconds ahead of Sainz, who finished in second place. However, that was not the end of it. See, as soon as the race ended, Richards and the Subaru team were incredibly angry with McRae for not following orders. When the time came to confirm the results, they decided to hand in his timing sheets late at the final control. As a result, the FIA stewards penalized him by 10 seconds in his overall race time, meaning that he was not the final winner.
Colin, on paper, you've won this rally. Isn't that the situation?
Yeah, but we've had to book in a minute late now, so we're second.
So this was categoric team orders.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Now that the teammates were equal on points after the end of the Rally Catalunya, McRae was going to channel his anger into an all-out assault in the final race of the 1995 World Rally Championship, back where his career started, the United Kingdom.
You're in an enviable position, Colin, being the only Brit to be able to bring the World Championship back to your home country.
I would be kidding myself on if I said there's no pressure. There is, but I just have to deal with it the best I can and then get on with it and do the best job I can.
During the day of the final race of the World Rally Championship in England, the atmosphere was electric. Across the rally's 2,330-kilometer route, thousands of fans from all over the UK gathered to witness the climax of a thrilling season. A few hours before the start of the event, McRae was seen intensely focused, while Sainz remained calm and collected as per usual. Yet, despite their different attitudes, both drivers could feel the enormous weight that this race carried. For McRae, this was his chance to accomplish a dream that he's had since he was a kid, and a golden opportunity to cement his name in the elite of motorsport. On the other hand, for Sainz, this was his opportunity to prove to the world that, contrary to what his doubters thought, he could still become a world champion for the third time in his career at 33 years of age. As the race began in the cold and rainy English weather, it was clear that McRae held a grudge for what had happened in Rally Catalunya. Right from the first stage, he was racing and drifting across the soaked gravel roads at speeds that surpassed 160 kilometers per hour, disregarding mechanical limits and not paying attention to any of the team's orders. Everyone who attended the event and the thousands of fans who eagerly watched from home that day could tell two things about McRae. He was inspired like never before in his career, and no one was going to stop him that day. As the race progressed, Colin's intimate knowledge of the local stages allowed him to push the Subaru Impreza 555 to its limits, displaying a total sense of confidence on the track throughout each and every stage. On the other hand, Sainz, who comfortably held second place after the second leg, struggled to match McRae's pace despite trying his hardest.
I can do more. At the moment I am driving as fast as I can.
As the final leg approached, McRae continued his performance of a lifetime, with no other driver even coming close to him. When the final stage was completed, he had done it. In his home country, he became the first ever British World Rally Champion in the history of rallying, with a mind-boggling 36-second difference against his teammate Carlos Sainz, who ended in second place in the race and in the overall standings. As McRae celebrated with the classic champagne spray on the podium, the crowd cheered in euphoria, revealing the joy of witnessing a homegrown talent make history at one of the biggest stages in motorsport. But among the millions of people celebrating that day, there was no doubt that Jimmy McRae was the happiest. You see, before Jimmy was known as Colin's father, Colin was actually known as Jimmy's son, a 5-time British Rally champion and a strong contender in the European Rally Championship. Jimmy McRae was one of the most respected drivers of his era, known for his calculated, methodical approach and his competitive personality. From a very young age, Colin grew up as a student of a man who had spent decades mastering the art of control, precision, and fearlessness on the most challenging stages in Europe. However, his path to professional racing wasn't immediate. Since Colin couldn't legally compete in rally events until he was 18, the young Scottish talent immersed himself in motocross. Even though this wasn't what he truly wanted, his results told a different story. Throughout his 4-year motocross career, McRae consistently finished at the top in local competitions, gaining a reputation for his natural talent and his signature aggressive riding style. When he turned 18, it was finally time to transition to 4 wheels and chase his true passion. So he immersed himself in training with his father for around a year in preparation for his dream debut at the Scottish Rally Championship. When 1985 turned 1986, McRae signed as a professional independent driver with a Vauxhall Nova, a small team run by John Farrell Motorsport, an ex-rally driver and mentor who helped nurture young talent and give them their first taste of actual competition. To everyone's surprise, during McRae's first season in professional rally racing, he kept up with the most experienced drivers and demonstrated a natural ability to control the car at its absolute limit. After finishing 3rd overall in 1987, the 1988 season marked the first significant turning point in his professional career. In a thrilling final showdown, he beat Ken Wood in the last race of the year to become the Scottish Rally champion. For the millions of British fans who followed him closely and celebrated his success, they couldn't help but be drawn to his unique personality as he lifted the trophy. Determined, focused, crazy, and constantly pushing the limits. That was the reputation that McRae started building at the young age of 20, years before making history on the biggest stages in motorsport and becoming a racing legend. After competing in the Scottish Rally Championship for 3 years, his talent and determination caught the attention of the Subaru Rally team, which decided to sign him up for the 1991 British Rally Championships when he was only 22 years old. As many of his fans expected, McRae's first 2 years in the British Rally Championship with Subaru were marked by his fearless yet often reckless driving style, earning him the nickname Colin McCrash. While his raw speed and natural talent were undeniable, his aggressive approach frequently pushed the Subaru Legacy RS beyond its limits, resulting in a series of dramatic crashes that left Subaru with hefty repair bills. Halfway through his first season, opinions in the British rally community surrounding McRae were split. While some saw him as a loose cannon, too wild to ever be a true champion, others believed his willingness to take risks was precisely what made him unique and a contender for the title. However, despite a few setbacks, Colin silenced his doubters by winning the British Rally Championship 2 years in a row with his characteristic flat-out style and unwavering determination. As a result, Subaru decided to promote him to the World Rally Championship division for the 1993 season, where he would finally compete against the elite and prove to the world that he had what it took to become a world champion. The first 2 years were a roller coaster of highs and lows, marked by flashes of brilliance, costly mistakes, and retirements. While McRae secured his first WRC victory at Rally New Zealand in 1993 and followed it up with stronger performances, his aggressive style often led to crashes and mechanical failures, making his results inconsistent and frustrating for both his team and himself. However, after coming back and making history in the spectacular 1995 season, where he clinched the title ahead of Sainz, McRae was completely overshadowed by Tommi Mäkinen from Mitsubishi. For the next 4 years, Mäkinen became absolutely unstoppable, winning 4 consecutive WRC titles from 1996 to 99, while Colin's new nickname, McCrash, grew in popularity. Despite being a fan favorite, the fact that he crashed his car 17 times in the last 48 races meant that his relationship with the team at Subaru grew increasingly strained. By the end of the 1998 season, a breakup was inevitable, and when Ford offered him a record-breaking contract on a 3-year deal worth £3 million per season, McRae and his father, who was now overseeing the managerial aspects of his career, decided that it was the best move for his future. However, despite the commotion and excitement he caused for the American audience, Colin had gone from a car he knew well to an entirely new machine, the Ford Focus WRC. Without his old boss to keep his aggressive tendencies in check, his races in the World Rally Championship were plagued with crashes and mechanical failures, finishing only 3 of the 14 races of the season as he continued to push beyond the car's limits. However, despite his struggles on paper, McRae remained a legend among rally fans in America and all around the world. For them, the beauty of rallying wasn't just about winning, it was about pushing the limits, defying the odds, and putting on a spectacle. The fact that McRae simply refused to slow down and took risks no other driver would dare to in every race only cemented his reputation as the ultimate crowd favorite. Whether it was threading his car through impossibly tight gaps, sliding inches away from barriers, or blasting past his own mechanics when they tried to wave him down, his audacity made him the most thrilling driver to watch at the time. However, in 2001, after getting married to Alison McRae, something seemed to have happened to Colin. After so many years, he finally seemed to be in control of his racing due to a newfound sense of stability and focus. Throughout the 2001 season, he delivered some of his best performances in years, balancing his trademark aggression with a level of precision that he never showed in the past. Finally, after 16 years of racing, it seemed that he had tamed the beast inside of him. When the last race of the season was held in Great Britain, he sat in first place in the standings, meaning that he was going to fight for the championship in the last race of the season against his former team, Subaru. The season finale in Great Britain was set to be the biggest race in years. If McRae won, he would make one of the biggest comebacks of all time by securing his second World Rally Championship. On the other hand, for Subaru, This was the chance to prove to the world that they made the right decision by letting their previous star go. As the engines roared to life, the race that followed was full of drama and relentless competition. Heavy rain and muddy conditions made the stages even more treacherous, forcing drivers to balance aggression with precision. It was the perfect test for the new Colin. Throughout the first two legs, the Scot remained fearless, setting record-breaking times and leading the event as he kept the pressure on his closest rivals, Richard Burns and Tommi Mäkinen. However, in a cruel twist of fate, disaster struck. In what would become one of the most heartbreaking moments of his career, McRae, pushing as aggressively as ever, rolled off his Ford Focus WRC just when the race had less than 2 stages to go before it was over. Again, the ghosts of his past mistakes returned, and his and Ford's championship hopes were shattered in an instant. As the reality of the incident sank in, the dream of reclaiming his world title slipped away before his eyes. Meanwhile, Richard Burns, his former teammate at Subaru, capitalized on McRae's misfortune, delivering a consistent and measured performance to secure his first and only World Rally Championship title. McRae was devastated. Another shot at glory had slipped through his fingers, not because he lacked the skill, but because his nature simply refused to back down. For the next few years, things never entirely fell into place. Loeb and Citroën's dominance in the early 2000s marked a new era in rallying, one that prioritized precision and consistency over sheer bravery. The sport was changing, and McRae, despite his talent, struggled to adapt. By 2003, Ford decided not to renew his contract, and for the first time in more than a decade, Colin McRae found himself without a seat in the World Rally Championship. But he wasn't done just yet. Even outside of WRC, McRae's hunger for speed remained insatiable. In 2004, he took on the grueling Dakar Rally, one of the most punishing endurance races on the planet. With no prior experience in rally raids, McRae did what he always did: go flat out. During his event, Colin had started the first 10 days strong, consistently running among the frontrunners and proving that even in unfamiliar territory, he was on course for a remarkable podium finish despite being entirely new to the event. Yet, with just 2 days to go, and as expected for most of his fans, McRae's Nissan suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure due to severe suspension damage caused by pushing the car too hard in the desert. Just like in the previous 4 years, he was out. But yet again, he wasn't done. The following year, when he was 37 years old, his versatility, adaptability, and innate talent allowed him to try something entirely new: Le Mans. Behind the wheel of the Ferrari 550 GTS, McRae entered the most prestigious motorsports race and proved to the world that he was one of the most versatile drivers. He finished 9th in his class and surprised the entire world of motorsport once again. Without a doubt, it was an impressive feat for someone who had spent his life sideways on gravel and was just debuting in the world of endurance racing at such an elite level. However, just 2 years later, in 2006, it seemed like the relentless competitor in him was finally ready to take a step back. In a surprising turn of events, McRae decided that it was time to switch gears in his professional life, but without stepping away entirely from motorsport. For the first time in his life, he no longer wanted to become a full-time competitor, so he poured his passion and soul into something that would immortalize him beyond rallying: entrepreneurship. The Colin McRae Rally Series, first launched in 1998, had become one of the most iconic racing video games ever made. McRae, a perfectionist, was now heavily involved in its development, ensuring that the physics and mechanics reflected the brutal reality of rally driving. On the other hand, he also built a car that embodied his fearless spirit, the McRae R4, a lightweight, high-performance rally machine designed for both professional and amateur drivers. Built with a focus on durability and raw speed, it was a testament to everything he had learned throughout his career. For the first time ever, McRae was happy with the balance he had found between motorsport and family life. He was finally slowing his lifestyle down so that he could spend more time with his wife and children. Nevertheless, no matter how much time passed, the fire inside him simply couldn't be extinguished. On a late summer afternoon in Lanark, Scotland, 39-year-old McRae was flying his personal helicopter near his family estate with his 5-year-old son Johnny, a friend, and another young boy who was visiting for the day. The plan was to return home from a friend's farm, perform a low-altitude flyover of the countryside, and land safely at his private helipad. Unfortunately, at 4:10 p.m., tragedy struck one last time. Just before reaching its destination, it was reported by the emergency services that McRae's helicopter lost control and crashed in a wooded area near his home.
Police remained through the night at the scene of the crash near Colin McRae's house in Jervis Wood near Lanark. Air accident investigators have yet to establish exactly what happened, but it is known the aircraft came down just after 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, with 4 passengers on board, all of whom were killed. The helicopter belonged to Mr. McRae, but no formal identification has taken place of the bodies. Strathclyde police aren't expected to confirm their identities until later today. Initially, they said the damage from the accident was so bad that they didn't know how many people were on board.
In the following hours, it was confirmed that all 4 passengers had died in the impact. As the world of motorsport stood still, Colin McRae was confirmed to not only be in the crash, but to be the one who caused it. The news sent shockwaves through the motorsport community. Drivers, teams, and fans worldwide mourned the loss of a legend, a driver who embodied everything that made rallying the most extreme form of racing. The saddest thing was that this accident could have been easily avoided if McRae had followed proper flight regulations and not flown too low or at high speeds over uneven terrain. In the end, it was clear that Colin's urge for adrenaline was something that he simply couldn't contain. During the days following the incident, thousands of fans gathered in Lanark for his funeral. His father, Jimmy McRae, stood alongside racing greats like Sebastian Loeb, David Richards, and Ken Block as they honored a man who had inspired generations. Even though his story had a tragic ending, he will always be remembered for never giving up, his relentless spirit, and his fearless approach to racing, which redefined what it meant to be a rally driver for decades to come.